right, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Oh yeah, foreign. They were doing that. The whole Ellie thing from Overwatch. Did you hear about that one, Rob?
Mm-mm.
Apparently, a top female Overwatch player was being harassed, and people were arguing about whether she was real or not. It caused a lot of journalists to, talk, support her and say stuff like that. And then it was revealed that this account Ellie was basically a fake account played by a top competitive player who was a man.
That's interesting.
Very very weird story like that. There's definitely like a greater topic here. Maybe this will be our topic. We'll see how much trouble we get into with this one, Rob. But
Oh, good.
the idea of the whole I guess like splitting genders when it comes to the whole esports. Like, as we know, when it comes to real life sports, there's always a men's division, there's always a women's division, tennis, stuff like that, women's basketball, stuff along those lines. But this is one of those very weird cases when it comes to the whole esports and trying to grow that as a professional field. That a lot of people still treat it as being like a separate kind of thing. Like, if you're on a team, it's got to be either all men or all women. At least from what I've seen. I guess this is a question for people watching. Are there like teams of esports players that are co-ed that allow like both men and women to be on there, or are they still kept as separate genders like that? But it's a very weird thing when it comes to the game industry. Like, people will say, women can't play video games, or, the best players are men, stuff like that. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Ramin, when it comes, again, like the whole gender inequality issue. And I don't know, like, this is one of those stories, like the whole Ellie thing, that just sounds very like icky to me, I guess, to put it mildly. Like, it all started with them harassing someone who thought, that they harassed, I guess, quote unquote, her because they thought it was a woman. Then it turns out this was all just a giant fake, and like, it's one of those things where it's like it's hard to figure out where to, stop blaming or stop going after people for. Like, what do you make out of this whole crazy thing?
Well, again, my experience playing online is limited, but the esport we're in is very keen on getting women into the sport in terms of like the pro teams, and there are multiple women who made it into the final cut last year, and no doubt this year as well. And one of the things in listening to some podcasts for Dota in particular, there are women down, I believe, in South America, possibly. I think it was Brazil, but I could be wrong. I apologize if I am. But they're creating a women's league. Now, the reason that you find women separated on their own teams, I feel like the men on their own teams is not on purpose. The women on their own teams is on purpose because of this problem of abuse and just general online meanness, which is basically what you can have, and it winds up being gender specific insults and that kind of thing, which is just flat out harassment. And so it doesn't really embrace an entire gender in coming in and playing. And it's not like the skill set is that different. There isn't that much of a trade-off here. Yeah. There are plenty of women who are just as good. The problem is that it's not an inviting place to go. Yeah. And this is a culture thing, and it's a culture thing that needs to shift a little bit. I don't know how. I don't have a solution. I just don't have a solution. Now, people often go online as the gender that they are not, and the experience is very different. So whether or not this person was male or female, if there was indeed harassment, if it's gender specific, then there's a problem. It's weird that you have to have guy do this for there to be any attention paid? Again, if it's a false story, that's even worse for all this. This is well, I'm glad someone misses me. But it's such a weird like dynamic out there, and I think it can come down to just age. Like, I don't know at what point an adult becomes an adult. Like, I was never good with girls. I was never, and it just took time, for just to, because you got all these hormones going around and whatnot. It sucks on so many levels. So it could be age. It's probably culture. I mean, we're all brought up differently, and I'm just interested to see where it goes, because it is weird that there's such a difference in treatment based on gender, and that should not. I don't know how to solve it. Yeah. I don't think anyone knows how to solve it. I think you just kind of push forward and keep educating kids, and over time it helps. I don't know.
I think we need to get Ramin back on, turn this into like an 8-hour podcast. But and that's one of those weird things. Like, this is what's so frustrating when we have these discussions like this, that it's never like one thing. Like, you can never really focus on one particular part of this. It's kind of like, I don't know, like throwing like a Super Bowl or something, like throwing like a rock in like a china shop, that it never just hits one thing. It's going to hit multiple areas. And like, you have people on YouTube, like with the whole Ellie situation, you have some people covering this strictly from men harass women pretending trying to prove that she's not a woman. Then you have the people who focus, oh, this is, SJW Gates. We learned that, all these journalists were idiots thinking that this was a woman when it was just a man. And, like, you can't really focus on one thing in this kind of situation. The same thing when we talked about the whole idea of the whole backlash behind, like, feminist frequency and stuff along those lines. That, like, the people who just cover this from, woman being attacked by gamers, ignore the idea that she's not really talking about things from a game design, game analytic point of view. But likewise, the people who just focus on that will choose to ignore the fact that this is a woman being harassed online for saying things she doesn't like about video games. And it's just very hard, or it's, as you said, it's almost like near impossible to have these discussions, as a level-headed kind of thing, because you're always going to have people on both sides focusing on the part that they deem is the quote-unquote smoking gun.
Yeah, and along those lines, into foreign, that's true. When you, like, it's hard to even joke about it or be in jest or playful with it, because it is a polarizing thing, and it makes it incredibly easy to troll. And so when you have like, someone just can say something that's an outright lie, like, oh, I was a woman and I'm not, and I was online and just this specific person harassed me, and you can just get that person in a lot of trouble, just because it's, you made it up, you're not even a woman, this never happened, and yet you can spark outrage just like that. And the fact is, it makes it, the parts where it's true, all the harder to believe, and that's problematic. And it's so it's just, like I say, it's so easy to troll that you can pick out examples where there's just trolls, and you're just like, well, see, that one's fake, so how can we trust the rest of this?
Be fake.
Yeah.
Yep. What was the example I was just thinking of? There's just an example that came to my head about that. Like, there are, like we said, like, the people who are on the extremes, like, they will jump on any story if it fits, what they're looking for. Are you looking for a case of a woman being harassed? Even if it's not true, there are examples of that. Or are you looking for a case where, a woman gets shut down, and you look how stupid this person is for believing that? Oh yeah, there are examples of that. And as you said, it's very hard to separate what's true and what's not. And more important, it's very hard to have these discussions. Because if you're going to have a discussion that deals with both sides of these issues like this, you're going to piss off people. I mean, right now, I am going to bet you that there are people watching this record who are going to say that we're not siding with women enough, how dare you? And there's people who are probably calling us SJW White Knights right now. How dare you not support the video games right now?
Right, and it's also hard because you do need a panel of people who've experienced this. That is a panel of female gamers, so they can come on and give their true experience. And I feel like we often jump to the side of things where, oh, how do you know, like that might not have been true, or you didn't understand what was going on. Like, it's so easy to do the blame game for people who come out with their own experiences instead of listening and trying to learn from it and change the culture. I mean, again, this discussion is different in everybody's mind, and unless we have a panel of women on here who can actually speak towards this from their side, it's hard for me to do that,
and how quickly these situations just snowball out of control. Like, by the time you start writing up a piece or trying to express thoughts on like the initial issue, everybody's already like 5 steps ahead, talking about, oh, this person said this, but then they were immediately harassed and doxxed and hatred and, piled upon, so you now can't argue about that initial point because then you're seen as you're supporting the harassers. And it's just one of those cases, like we mentioned this last week and originally with the whole Jessica Price situation with Arena.net, and how like within like 24 hours that whole thing escalated to the point that you couldn't have a discussion about it without everybody jumping on you for not agreeing with their specific point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is again, I don't know how, because it is a difficult discussion. But generally speaking, from the side, I want gamers to feel comfortable going into a gaming environment, and that I feel like should be the end goal. Like, the fact of the matter is, I don't necessarily. There are a lot of games that, as a noob, I don't want to play because I just don't feel like being yelled at for not being good enough in a game that doesn't matter. That's a problem. As a new player in any game, like. A guy I work with, trying to get into the game we make, just runs into people just insulting the heck out of him for not being as good as they are, or in their perception not being as good as they are. And it's just it's not a fun experience in general. So just eliminating as much of that as possible, because it's rancor that is accepted on a lot of levels, and often distributed by people not old enough to vote or drink, which makes it even more maddening because you can't really control that.
Yeah. I think the 12-year-olds would probably snipe me in Fortnite, right? If I try and play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and again, like, it's one of those situations, like we talked about this either last week or the week before, with the idea of tying like a Battle.net accounts to your Twitch for when you try to sign on. Like we mentioned, like the whole idea of fandom like that. Like at the end of the day, it's just one of those cases where I think no matter how you try and do this, somebody is going to get burned. Like, there's no way, like, I don't see it, again, I think I'm being cynical here, that it's going to come out that everybody's going to get what they want in this situation. Like, whether it comes down to gamers having to curtail some of their discussions or their talks playing video games, or to people who aren't being as comfortable having to kind of, shrug it off and say, that's kind of how it goes.
Well, the way I like to look at that in a particular item is, if you're saying, well, I have to pare down my speech, my answer to that is, well, don't look at it as being, having to pare down your speech. Look at it as having to be respectful to someone else.
Yeah.
Like, that other person is not you, and you can't just act like you're their best friend and start insulting them with foul language and insulting their mothers. That's another person that you don't know. It's easy to just be cordial. You don't have to be their best friend. You just, you're playing a game that you both love. You have that in common. Yeah. You don't need to go beyond that. Like, you never need to drop F-bombs while playing these games. Like, even if you do it out of frustration. You don't insult the other person. Yeah. You're trying to be respectful of other people who enjoy the same thing you do. Yeah. So I don't know why you'd even risk being disrespectful. Like all you're trying to do is be respectful to a fellow human being, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Like no one's trying to limit, censor what you can say. They're just asking you to be respectful to someone else. That's the way you should look at it. Like, yeah, say whatever you want at home and without, a microphone on. Like Josh, when we're talking here, like maybe I want to drop a bunch of F-bombs talking about this, but I can't because, I have to be respectful of your show and you have to be respectful of YouTube, or else you're going to get kicked off, and that makes sense.
And I think what you were saying earlier about being like kind of like a cultural or ageism kind of issue, I think is also true as well. I mean, again, like people know that I'm pretty much put who I am here as I do in real life. Like I don't walk around in real life screaming and cursing at people, just as I'm on here screaming and cursing at people. And like for me, that stuff is easy. But you do have a lot of people who feel like, as you said, that when you're online or the anonymity, that you are free to say this kind of stuff. Josh never swears. I do very mild swears. I do the PG-13 swears a lot.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too, which is weird being in a game dev environment where people are just they're swearing it up all the time. It feels strange when I speak because I don't really censor myself. I just speak like that. I say heck instead of any other words. But like it's weird. I think people notice. They're like, that guy never swears, and I'm like, well, I it's just not how I do. It's just not me. Yeah. But that is the part about games I feel like that really brings out the devil in people. That's a weird word to use, but like what I mean, to bring out their like worst side, because it's competitive, because it brings out your passions, because you're frustrated, and people don't deal with frustrations by being nice. Oh, no. They deal with frustrations that you have to let something out, and it's just about figuring out the best way to vent without while holding respect for somebody else.
Yeah. I know, Mike. It is very easy. I mean, we all do our very dry wit insults around here in our discussions like that. But like I was trying to think about this again, like going back to when I spoke with Ramin, that at the end of the day, I don't think a lot of the stuff people say is going to work really is. Like the whole Twitch timings IDs, trying to curtail negative thoughts, stuff like that. Like again, I feel like thank you, Draken. That, like, going back to what he said, that it goes beyond that kind of discussion. It has to do, again, with, I do agree that it has to do a lot more with, like, like that xenophobic tendencies, the us versus them, men versus women, women versus men, that kind of argument. And for things to change like that, it's going to be more of a societal change rather than just saying, you can't scream the F word when you're playing a video game anymore. Like, that's not going to solve the gender inequality anytime soon.
Well, especially given the fact that this is kind of how it's always been, like throughout my life, and as the younger generation, keeps coming into their own. I find that people are much more loose with their language, and then like that's just how it is. Like our generation, and I'm kind of speaking for you, even though you're a few years younger than me, right? I'm looping you into my oldness, but like we swear a lot more than our parents' generation did, and so I imagine and just speaking with people younger, like they swear more than I did. That's just kind of the language, and so to snipe words that shouldn't be said, it becomes more difficult over time. And certainly in just banter, the language just kind of it goes there. But it is about respecting the other people. So finding that middle ground, like being able to swear without directly insulting someone else should be okay, but I'm not the one who can make that decision.
Yeah. And like as you said, like when it comes to like competitive games or like the competitive scene in general, I mean that has become a very I know, Draken, like it's become a very toxic place, like no matter like who you are. Again, like I've said this, I refuse to play League of Legends anymore. Like I don't have the time to care about people yelling and screaming and cursing. And those are my friends when we play that game. Like I don't have that care. And it does get heated when you play games like that. Like nobody wants to lose in a video game. But like as you said, and as people said as well, like there's a difference between saying "screw you" because you beat me, or you're being a jerk, versus "screw you" because you're a woman, or I hate you because you're a man, or you are this skin color, you're that ethnicity. Like those are two very different things, at least in my book.
You old head, go home. That's I've never had that said to me, but I'm just waiting for it to happen at some point. But like it all comes down to that, and figuring out how to be competitive and deal with your frustrations in an environment where there are others who are very different from you, and figuring out how best we can all do that and find that common ground, which is never going to happen. Let's be honest, but there's a way we can. Yeah. Sports are one of those things that bring out the absolute worst in people. Like when I watch soccer, I'm like, oh, this makes American fans look good. When a goalie gets murdered for scoring on their own goal or something like that, that's scary. Or there was a couple instances between Giants and Dodgers fans that got people sent to the hospital. So I think to point the finger at games is like we've mentioned a couple times, it's not entirely appropriate. It's a significantly more culturally based thing that has to be dealt with. And Twitter, like my wife, she swears like a sailor, like worse than a sailor. She'd make a sailor blush. Like that's her language, and it's weird seeing our dichotomy. But like on Twitter, she's just, when something happens, like she will, like politically, she will just go after whoever it is and just lay into them. She does that less with run of the mill folks, but it's strange how that all works.
Yeah. And I guess trying to bring this somewhat back to the original topic about the whole idea of
what were we talking about?
What was that, an hour and a half too? About the whole Ellie situation again. About can men play with women? Can women play with men? Like for me, again, I'm not sure how much trouble we'll get into with this one. Like I think that whole thing is just BS. I think that teams should be co-ed. Like I don't believe that there's anything genetic-wise that makes a man better at playing a game than a woman. Now, when it comes to like physicality and stuff like that, yes, there are obviously some physical disadvantages or advantages both genders have. But there's nothing that says why a woman can't have, a 90 click per minute or a key per minute press that a man has playing StarCraft or anything like that.
Yeah, and again, we'll see this over time. Time is the thing that'll tell. You get female gamers in the pro space, it'll start. I mean, it's going to cause a stir no matter what. Like again, I know our league is trying, the 2K league is trying, and they want to be fair about it too, not just have someone who's a poster child, for gender equality. Because teams are being competitive, they don't want to lose, so they want the best. And if the best are all men, well, that's just kind of what it's going to be. But the moment you have females who are part of that best, who aren't brought onto a team because they're a woman, that's when you run into problems. Because they foresee issues, just like women in the armed forces and that kind of thing. It's those issues will come up, and we'll society has to deal with them, and we'll figure out as it goes. I'm sure we'll have another discussion when something like that blows up in the future.
Yep, and like as you said, the whole like tokenism thing is also a big problem, because it's again one of those lose situations. You bring a top female competitor onto a pro esports team, and on one hand, you have all the people saying, oh, you just have her because she's a woman, you're checking that off. And then on the other hand, then that woman has to basically be super, mindful and P's and Q's, and basically has to be almost a robot, because if she says anything bad or she gets into trouble, then you got everyone saying, oh, well, this is why you can't have a woman on a team, because look what happened to her.
Well, and there's also the problem where if she's not the top 5 players, then she's going to be, thought of as not good enough. And that is a problem too. You have to be that much better than everyone else when all the eyes. You can't be like middle of the pack, because then people will just say, well, why
is she on this team? Why don't you have blah 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 who are the top 5 players? And I think, again, I think the only way this is going to move forward is with some major growing pains. Like to basically say that top 10 players are going to be on a team. I don't care if they're all men, I don't care if they're all women, I don't care if they're a combination. These 10 people, they're the top, let them be on a team, or, let them be kind of considered first place. And again, if it comes down to the fact that by skill, it's all women, or it's all men, or any combination, like, everyone has to basically cut their losses at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, Danger. This is kind of what brought it up, the whole Overwatch situation. But yeah, again, whenever we have these discussions, I'm more, I think, pessimistic than I am optimistic about it. Something has to give, I think. I think from a cultural standpoint, if we're ever going to move forward in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic in that it'll happen. I'm pessimistic in, it's a mess, and it is. There's so much more to discuss that does not pertain to games here. That it makes it difficult, So again, it's tough, and I think I think we've explored the game side. I don't know how much more. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Again, at this point, I think we've made our positions pretty much clear. That we want there to be equality, but it's going to take, I think, work on both sides. Like there has to be some kind of common ground, and if we don't get that, it's just going to be spinning our wheels. Let all the men will play with all the men, all the women will play with all the women, and neither side will ever meet again, and that's not really going to move things forward. Like when we talk with Ramin. Yeah, and that's a very interesting point there, Dragon, about both sides. I mean, I've seen this too. Ramin and I, we spoke about this. We've had situations in our lives where we were discriminated on by a group of women, being the only man or one of the few men in a chosen area. Again, that xenophobic tendency, or the tribe mentality, it cuts both ways. It's not just men who only hang with only men, it's women who will do the same thing. Or as what Ramin said, whoever's in a position of power will want to hold on to that power for dear life. They don't want to give it up. And again, like I said, I'm just kind of spinning my wheels here, that it's going to have to give. If things are going to get better, it's going to have to give at some point for everybody.
Yeah, but I do gotta say, this whole both sides thing is kind of bullcrap.
Yeah.
It's not equal on both sides. Yeah. It never has. It hasn't been. The fact that males can say that we're discriminated against is kind of BS. And you may find individual examples of that happening, but it's not true. And the fact that we can point to something is telling of our own insecurities. I've been a very blessed individual in my life from the starting up, but the fact is I don't have to walk to my car in the dark with the keys in my hand just in case someone wants to rape me. I don't have to argue with people that I slept my way to the top. I don't have to go with all of this stuff. I don't have to back up my success because of my gender. I don't have to do that. I've run into women who have to do that every day. It's a real struggle, and I do wish we had a panel of women here who could speak more to it. But all I can do is speak towards my the examples I've run into with my wife, with my sister, with my cousins, with friends. It's a real problem, and taking the side of the victim does not help to say that, well, I'm a victim too, when you just have more. That doesn't help.
Yeah. And that's what Ramin and I were talking about, that we've had issues like that. Does that mean that we're being victim every day? Hell no. I know that the one situation that I had does not come anywhere equal to what a woman faces. And it's the same thing with people of color and minorities, that just because you had one bad day doesn't mean that, that day ends. You've had a bad day, you can keep going. for people who suffer and have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't end. Like you said, like we see this a lot, like as a Draken is mentioning, that, if a man sleeps around with a lot of women, that's cool, he's great, he's a player. If a woman does that, boo, how horrible, don't trust her. And again, I think at the end of the day, it's going to take a societal shift, I think, that beyond just video games for this to go away, or at least get a little bit better.
Yeah. Just to the comment about being good and getting hate no matter what, that's true. It's absolutely true. But if I'm great at something, I'm going to get your trash. If I'm a woman and great at something, I'm going to be insulted for my gender. And that's the core problem here. It's not about being insulted that you're good or bad. It's about being insulted specifically for something that describes you physically because you're bad.
Yep. And like we see again that, unfortunately, like when a woman does really great at a game, as you said, like she will either be hounded by people, or people will go after her saying, "Oh, you're not a woman," or we think you're cheating and stuff like that. And again, like it's an issue that goes beyond video games, and it's never going to. Like I think keeping this strictly in the video game point of view is too small-minded. I think, like when we spoke with Ramin, like it's going to take a greater shift than just by saying women can play video games or men need to curtail their speech. It's never going to just go away.
Yeah.
Again, like discussions about this are so hard to have, especially when, again, it's two guys sitting here talking about it. I know, Mojo. See,
I say horrible things. That's why I say politically charged things. I'm being sarcastic. I don't. But yeah, I apologize if I have that people.
But again, like I think we'll wrap things up here because there's not much more we can really say on the topic. And as always, things will probably, by the time next week comes around, there'll probably be another expose or a scandal to talk about. Melanius. Yep. But again, there's so many people who don't look at it as skill. They look at it as, you beating me. If you're a man, you're, F you. If you're a woman, then you probably cheated. And the wheel just keeps spinning around and around. But who knows? Maybe this decade coming up, we'll see some major changes. There's my quote-unquote optimism for tonight.
I feel like we solved all the problems today. That's what I think. I think as a group we've solved everything, and it's all fixed. Let's put that stamp on it.
You think? There we go. And Draken throws in like a sigh thing as well. But yeah, again, we'll see what happens, but who knows? I guess we'll cross that bridge again next week or whatever.
Sounds good.
Alright, so that was a very uplifting end to our chat this week, but thank you everybody for watching, whether you're live or recorded. For the recorded folks, if you wouldn't mind keeping the comments at least somewhat clean without going, crazy, that would be great. But otherwise, be sure to check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where exactly the art and science of games. Again, let you get this whole talk ad-free and uncut. You can check out patreon.com/GWBycer. And for anyone who donates $25 or more before the end of February, you'll get a mention in my upcoming book. But Rob, it was great hanging out with you as always, and I'm sure we'll see you next